I shouldn't say delays, they're busy. And thank goodness for the FAA, it makes us all safe. But Al Kimball, who was my principal maintenance guy out of Orlando, watching when I joined Kissimmee, so I knew him, and he became the DAR, Designated Aviation Representative, to license the airplane. So he got busy and couldn't get there on time because he was busy with other things. And we finally got a license the day before Oshkosh 2018. We did not have time to do all the test flying, which all went very well. Do the test flying, and Ray is busy flying F-16s and flying for Delta and flying other Warbirds, and so there's problems, time frame there. So we didn't make 2018. So we're 51 weeks late for 2018.
Right. So on that day, Ray, you got in the cockpit on last day of the year, and what happened?
Well, it was a very nice day to go down. Like Tom said, the airplane was ready. There was so much that went into it, and every time we went down to prepare for the flights, it was a little bit of a sideshow. So we had so many people. Obviously, it's a huge worldwide interest when this airplane was going to fly. I know a lot of pressure for people to get it flying. So on that day when we came down, we knew we had an airplane ready to go. We wanted the people to be there to see it fly, but so everything had to be right. So really, we just went down with the intent to get some more taxi time on the airplane. But if all the stars aligned, which it did, I knew once I pushed the power up on that, once I set the power, I knew I was going to go fly on that day. And it did just beautifully, and obviously very short flight. So we did the first official flight actually in January, but it was nice to get some air under it, and it was a huge momentum to take us into really the first official flight, which we invited everybody down to come see. So even though, I think amongst our camp, we knew the airplane was probably going to get some air under it that day, it worked out real well.
What is that like for you when you, as a test pilot, the first flight thing? What is that like for an aviator to get on an airplane and really not know for sure that it's going to fly?
Well, a lot of airplanes that I've test flown are airplanes that other people have flown. So it's hard to speak to an airplane like this to where there's just not a lot of data. And I say not a lot of data, obviously it was an approved flying airplane. There's a flight manual. You really have all the information right there in front of you, which is great. But Anderson was wonderful. We talked to the people with the commemorative Air Force that actually had one. So the last flying F-82 flew in the early 80s, and that airplane is the one that's sitting in the Dayton Museum right now, never to fly again, unfortunately. So there were a few people. One guy's named Ronnie Gardner. He actually flew. He's the guy that actually flew that airplane back in the 80s, and so I was able to get some information before I got into it. However, but to answer your question, this one is so unique. Whenever you get into the airplane, it really, certainly a great background airplane, the T6, the P-51, a lot of the other Warbirds kind of prepares you, but when you strap on two airplanes, it is a different experience.
So explain that. You said it's unique. In what way?
Well, obviously everyone looks at it and says, man, I think it's the number one question, like, what cockpit do you choose to fly from? Well, you actually solo the airplane from the left cockpit. And like with the FAA, you were talking about, even from the FAA standpoint, since there's no one qualified, there's no instructors qualified, there's really nobody, they have to kind of scratch their head and go to the deepest end of the regulations to find a one-of-a-kind airplane. So whenever they blessed me to go fly the airplane, since it is a new rebuild, you have to go straight into the flight testing program, which is the phase 1 testing. However, usually you would have somebody come test fly your airplane that's already qualified in it. So you have no one qualified, you have to do the phase 1 testing, and those rules are pretty specific. You can't train. In fact, the running joke was even at the end of our test phase, which like Tom said, went incredibly well. In fact, the FAA was going to work to actually lower the number of hours we needed because the flight testing went so well. We actually went to the end of the test phase anyway. It just worked out in the hours. But at the end of that phase, I was still not a P-82 pilot. I'm still playing one on television, right? Because from a regulation standpoint, now I have to go out and train myself in the airplane, single-seat airplane, and then have somebody else come in and evaluate me fly it to prove that I can actually fly it. So it is quite a process. But again, as when you ask about the flight characteristics and the testing, it is unbelievably unique just from a standpoint of taxiing. And I would say that is the biggest challenge when you taxi. And of course, you see how wide the gear is. I don't even know how wide the gear is. You probably know how wide it is, Tom, but it's wide. So when you're taxiing down your normal size taxiway, if you decide to taxi in the middle and you're sitting in the left fuselage, that will put that wheel off in the dirt. So it's something you kind of make the center line a brick wall, and you just have to taxi on the little skinny taxiway on the left to keep this airplane just on the taxiway. So that's very unique.
With your incredible amount of experience flying so many different types of airplanes, did you get nervous? I mean, were you, quote, what we think of as nervous?
It may be ignorance, I don't know. Probably should have been nervous. But not really. You know, I know the level of detail and the amount of checks and rechecks and everything that Tom and his team does. You know, it's kind of like a NASCAR pit stop. You know, I land with the airplane to have the smallest of issues, and these guys are on it. And they're not just on it, but they're on it after a 14-hour, 15-hour day. You know, so the thing that you guys don't see is down in Douglas, Georgia, when there's no people. That, you know, after we got done with the day, and I'm going home because I'm tired, and I didn't do anything other than go fly around in an airplane for an hour and a half. These guys start in the morning, they start in the evening, so that really makes it. I think that makes the confidence a lot better. And when you look at the flight characteristics with this airplane compared to the P-51, some of the other airplanes, it's quite docile actually. It's very surprising on some of the things it does really well.
How similar is the cockpit and how it's all set up compared to a Mustang?
I'd say pretty similar. I mean, most people can see, and I'm glad they put the two airplanes together because I knew nothing about an XP-82 when I went down to fly it. So, you know, the first thing you do when you walk up to it is you see how much bigger it is. I mean, the thing is a monster. So I'm used to just jumping up on the wheel and jumping up on the wing. So this thing you pull up with your ladder to climb up on it, first off. But it's just in the cockpit, feels very Mustang. There's a few differences, but you kind of, once you get in the air, you kind of pretend that other airplane's not attached to you. It kind of looks and feels like a Mustang. In fact, if you take the pictures, you know, when I'm flying around with my iPhone taking pictures, if you don't take a picture over to the right, you'd never know you're in a P-82. It just looks like a...
So did you have your iPhone out taking pictures that first flight?
Oh, of course. No, I was quite focused on just not making the news in a bad way. But again, it flies very well, and the flight characteristics will surprise you on some of the stuff that we can talk about and how it flies.
So when you release the brakes, power brakes, what happened?
It goes straight as an arrow. So you know, in the P-51, everybody talks about the P factor and the torque and how you have to be gentle with the throttle, and that is a true statement. You got a 11-foot prop swing in there, so a lot of characteristics working against you to let you wreck it on a takeoff or landing. This is much like a jet. You know, both propellers are counter-rotating, so you know, I look down with however how much time I have in a Mustang. You know, you have your rudder trim set for right rudder trim, 6 degrees right rudder trim. When you look down this one, it's 0, so I have to resist the urge to put in rudder trim. It is zeroed. Everything's zeroed out, so it's much like a jet. You push the power up, it goes straight as an arrow. You know, it's a little different managing the engines, managing two Merlins, but again, it's like a dart. It goes very straight. And
so what happened? You rolled down the runway, and what happened?
I rolled down the runway on that. Like I said, at that point, you know, where I had picked a go, no go. So all of our high-speed taxis are relatively short time. So, you know, I knew if I put air under the airplane, I was going to fly it around the airport. So that was really not a contingent for putting it back on the ground to stop. Literally, it just accelerated. You know, I looked down, I'm at flying speed, and I still, you know, I'm like, man, it's a beautiful day. Let's go fly.
Two things you forgot to mention. The left-hand turning engine, which is, you know, right there, that's a left-hand turn for counter-rotating propellers. That was found brand new in a box, brand new, in a garage in Mexico City. How did it get there? We have no idea. There were only 40 of those engines ever built. 22 of them went on the XP and the B models, the 22 Merlin powered ones. Of course, the rest of them were Allison powered. So there was 18 remaining, and one of them ended up in Mexico City.
How in heaven's name
left-hand turning core and sending it to somebody for overhaul. And I get this phone call from Mike Nixon, all out of breath. He says, I found a brand new engine. Where? In a garage in Mexico City. Huh? I said, did you buy it? He said, yeah, I cost it, I bought it. I said, okay, it's mine. Now, even though it was brand new, still had to be overhauled.
So when he kicked off the brakes and all of a sudden was zooming out down the runway and went airborne, what was going through your head and heart, maybe?
Another airplane completed. And I came back, I said, any squawks? He said, no. Amazing.
So how much testing did you do on it, Ray?
Quite a bit. We've done quite a bit of testing. Of course, he's the only pilot always. I've taxied the airplane, and so is Max Hodges. I don't know where he is. He's somewhere in here. I don't know where he is. He's one of our other pilots. He flies in the right-hand seat. And he's spent
Can you fly this from the right seat?
This is
two controls.
The first 22 airplanes are full dual control. The only thing the person in the right seat cannot do is cannot put the landing gear up. It does not have aileron trim. He has everything else. So now the 23rd airplane through the 272 had a large radar pod hanging in the middle. You see the big hook in the middle there? That holds the radar pod. And he was a weapons systems officer, or a WISO as we call him, in the right-hand seat had a radar screen. So he had talked to the pilot and told him where to shoot. Right. So where to go. One other thing we did, one of the big glitches that we had is when I was here a year ago, we watched the Tiger Cat have a wheel failure. Now the two original wheels, and they're 3288 wheels, and it's quite a rare wheel. There are no other new wheels existed anywhere in the world. So I had two wheels that were in real nice shape, and they were already, had a yellow tag, and they were approved for flight. But they had microscopic little pits where the steel snap ring goes in to hold the wheel together. I looked at the Tiger Cat, had the wheel failure, and I went, So I went around trying to find new wheels, couldn't find them. So I talked to a man, Chuck Wall in California, and he specializes in building wheels. So that took us 5 months and a couple dollars to get wheels made. So that delayed our flight for 5 months.
Ray, when will we see this airplane fly?
So we're scheduled tomorrow to fly. It may fly this evening, but tomorrow it's scheduled to show. And we flew in the show on Tuesday, even though we didn't get to, they kind of cut it short based on their timing. They got a little behind at the show, which is a shame. But we got to go fly with a B-29, which was, I think, what most people wanted to see while they were here. But I had a great view of it because we went to the photo shoot with the B-29. But hopefully you guys will see it tomorrow, and we may fly it this evening based on the weather.
And with B-20, did you take some stills in the car?
Of course. Yeah, no, it was great. No, the photographers did. I've already seen one picture. I think they put it out on the EA website. It's a beautiful shot. It's very unique.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Riley and Ray Fowler. Now, welcome Sam Bass. 50 years of safe flying, over 35,000 hours in the cockpit. Ray's going to come out and start talking details of the airplane with these two gentlemen. Ray.
We really don't have too much to say because you covered it very well. You've done a great job there. But Ray, now that the airplane was designed, as you said, to go along for the B-29 trip in Tokyo. And it obviously missed that. And actually, the only combat was in Korea. How do you feel that it served that purpose in Korea?
I think it served it unbelievably well, except for it was designated as a night fighter. So, when I'm flying it in the day, which is interesting, I cannot imagine strapping this thing on at night and flying it as a night fighter. And I think a lot of the combat losses were just controlled flight into terrain, where you can imagine racing around in the hills in Korea, at nighttime trying to do good work. But the one thing I will say, and this is interesting about this airplane, and for all the multi-engine pilots out there, when they made the change of the firewall switch when the airplane would not fly. So originally, the engineers figured out, I'm sure it was quite embarrassing whenever they went down the runway and pulled back on the original prototype and it would not fly. They got the bright idea just to move firewall forward. They just took one engine to the left, the other one to the right, which basically turned it into a totally different docile airplane. So like Tom was talking about, both engines rotate in. So really, effectively, it removes, makes it almost centerline thrust. So I wouldn't have believed it if I haven't done it in this airplane, but everybody asks, it's obviously very high performance, but what's the blue line? So what can you fly with one engine and one engine shut down? This airplane, you can have one engine at full power, you can have the other one windmilling, not even feathered, and you can go do full stalls. So there is no blue line. It will stall well before, and it's very docile. In fact, when you're coming downhill, if you lose an engine, you probably never even know it. So when we've done the engine shutdowns, you put very little bit of rudder trim. It's just a very docile airplane for that reason. In fact, whenever you're going around corners, it more pulls you forward than any asymmetry on the taxi. So just an unbelievably unique airplane in that regard.
And I've known Ray maybe since he was 18 years old. He knocked on my door one time. He was trying to get next door to get his first Warbird ride. But anyway, Ray, now I know that you did a lot of preparation before this first flight, and you being a close friend of Bud, I'm sure you called him. What did Bud tell you?
It's funny. Well, I think most people have heard the story. So I asked Bud his impressions of the XP-82. Of course, his impression was it's one of the worst fighters ever built. Of course, he's comparing that against the P-51, which is so nimble. This airplane was really designed to do one thing really well, which was go long distances, and it's such a heavy airplane with the internal fuel. So he's also comparing this airplane. This one is built just like the XP-82, so all the improvements that went from the XP into the F-82s with the hydraulically boosted controls, they gave some improvements on the hydraulic system for the accumulator. So Tom has stayed pretty much totally pure to this airplane the way it would have flown as the XP program flew. To include certain things other than the avionics. He did give a really nice GPS, so I don't get lost. So that's embarrassing. But yeah, it flies. What you see is pretty much exactly how you would have seen it as it flew as an XP-82.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. It's been a great pleasure just to listen to it. And we've got a little time here for questions and answers. Anybody up here? I'm sure there's lots of people.
What happened?
Oh, just a minute. We'll give you a mic.
I think, Tom, you had mentioned at one time the woman wouldn't sell you the plane. I don't know what happened to the parts. And so you came back and bought some. She said she had sold whatever happened to that parts of the Mustang.
The first project that you weren't able to buy from Walter, where did the first project go?
Well, the first project went to Pat Harker, right there. He has the E-model, right there. This is the second project I had, which none of us knew that it existed.
Over here.
I'd like to say thank you for bringing this wonderful airplane out. It's probably the coolest thing in my opinion that's here right now. So thanks again for the effort that goes into keeping these things flying. My question is in regards to the single engine Mustangs. Is there a reason North America changed the glove angle on the later Mustangs as compared to the earlier ones?
You talk about the H model. So this was actually patterned after the H model. So if you saw the H, it's still here. In fact, it was on the alley. Yeah, so you got to look at that airplane. I think that's the only one flying, or H. There's like one or two that fly. So there were improvements. I think what makes a Mustang really look sexy, the lines and everything else, they kind of took all that out of the H model. So the H is an unbelievable performer because it's so much lighter. But it, again, that one looks a lot better than the H. But this was patterned after the H model. Now, why they took that out, engineering, I'm sure it's probably a little more efficient. This was really a high altitude, high speed escort airplane. There's probably some efficiencies in there that they did that, but that's a smart engineer question.
Next.
You mentioned that the first 3 kills in Korea was done by the 82. The very first one was Charlie Moran, who was from Horse Cave, Kentucky, my hometown. So, good
Very
deal.
cool.
Thanks.
Shot down the Yak 11, I think it was, or Yak 9 on the Yak, so very cool.
Next.
Is a significantly smaller rudder than the P-51. And it's an all-metal rudder, where the 51s were all fabric. Is this the first fighter to have all-metal control surfaces?
I think so.
So with the P-51, they had a harmonic. They actually had one on the early P-51s. They tested it with a metal rudder. And if you can, when you're flying next to it, you'll see the rudder moving. So there's a harmonic that sets up on this airplane that I would assume that they don't have on this one. But it is smaller, but you have two of them. So it's quite effective. They work really well.
Over here first.
How does this compare flying the P-38 with engine?
That's a real good question. So the P-38 is a totally different animal. So it, I would say the visibility is a lot better out of this airplane than the P-38. That is the one airplane that both engines rotate out, so both engines are critical. But also a very big, P-38 is a fighter, but it flies much like a B-25. In fact, when you get in that airplane, it feels like it's a very heavy airplane to fly. But this one I would say is easier to fly than a P-38, particularly the way that they manage the fuel system in that airplane. There's some other issues with that make that a little more challenging this airplane. They got this one figured out. They had put a lot more technology into, which would be later 40s technology into this airplane flying in the 50s.
That's one other thing that, as a matter of fact, is that we texted Ray the other night. We were talking about minimal control speed in the air, which Tom would be very familiar with. Almost every multi-engine airplane, it has some minimum control speed that you have to be above that if you lose an engine that you're able to control the airplane. Ray texted us back and he says it doesn't have any VMCA. And I had never heard
And the P-38 certainly does.
And I had never heard of a multi-engine airplane that didn't have that.
Yeah.
Then we have another question here.
I actually had the same question about how it performs compared to a P-38. So instead I'll just ask what's the fastest you've had it.
So this one we've had a little over 400, and I've had the same with the P-38 over 400. This one I've had over 500, so it'll effortlessly go to 505 miles an hour. The biggest thing too, we talked about like Bud talking about this airplane being so heavy to fly. So whenever Pat has his airplane flying, he'll have the hydraulics in it, so I'm sure it'll be a lot more finger light for a 19,000-pound airplane, which is still relatively light compared to when they put the tanks and they put the bombs and put the rockets. I bet it was a total pig back in Korea whenever they were loaded with combat load. But if you turn the hydraulics off in the P-38, it turns from a fighter into a dump truck, basically, in real flight. So much like this airplane too, it's just like your Cessna or Piper, it's cable driven. So when you get into the P-51 after flying this one's quite light on the controls, as you can imagine. But this one is still very honest. I take off, I turn it loose when I'm taking my pictures. It kind of flies itself.
Over here.
With the dual fuselages, is there any torsional twist? Can you feel it?
There is nothing. This, like I said, counter-rotating, everything is equal. It's straight as an arrow. And I will bring up a couple things that I didn't say, which is very unique about the airplane. So we talked about the taxi, but the running joke is that you're the best formation pilot in the world because you're always flying off yourself. But that being said, when you're looking through the fuselage at another airplane, you got to remember you are flying off of yourself. So you got to make sure you keep an eye on the other airplane because you kind of have to resist the urge to look through that other airplane. It's once I get in the air, I kind of just pretend that the airplane's not attached to me anymore. It seems to work out pretty well.
I want to thank both of you, and it's been a great day. As you know, this is brought to you by the Warbirds of America. We have our merchandise building behind you, and a lot of you think that we're all Warbird owners. Most of us are not. We would like to have your membership that'll support these people, and so that different people can see our different airplanes. But Warbirds merchandise is right up behind us over here. And also we want to thank TV Flying, the flyingtv.com for breaking this. Thank you very much.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please.
Also, Tim, and also, if you haven't seen the manual that they have, or the what do they call them? The thing they commemorative guide. You guys need to see that. They did such a beautiful job of that information. I don't know where they have it, but
It's right over here underneath the blue tin.
So I think
you
they have
mentioned
those
that
over here, and it's so beautifully done. There we go. So see this young lady there? I think they're $10 or something for that. Flip through one, and if you see it, it'll be worth $10. It's got the story for all of the Warbirds interviewed people for the week. Thanks to Connie Bolin, obviously, that put this together. I know you saw Connie at the beginning. We get to fly with her, and again, thanks for having us.
Okay, one other thing I did forget. We have commemorative coins over here. They were the pagan fighters, World War II museum. They're for our veterans. They're cotton challenge coins. And a little lady over here, she just disappeared. Wait a minute, here she comes back. She's got the red ribbon on her hair. But anyway, she has a for the veterans. Thank you very much.
The Air Force Museum Foundation presents D-Day Freedom from Above as part of the D-Day events happening at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. For the first time, this event will be on display in the U.S. It is the premiere of the historical
your flag or where your flag is
gives us the scenes on aircraft operating with compares scenes to 1944. Videos